welcome to today's 1% Lounge, guys. I got a very special guest. He goes by the greatest truth never told on YouTube. I've been watching him for 4 years now. He's been one of the biggest influences in my silver passion. And you guys know I always preach to the hills about silver, about gold, about a lot of precious metals and commodities in general. I feel commodities come from the earth, they're God's money, and there's a limited supply, so there's always a supply and demand crunch for them. And I'm a really big advocate for them. I have Dejan with me here, and go ahead and introduce yourself to my audience, Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris Dwayne. I run a YouTube channel called The Greatest Truth Never Told, where I set about probably 10 years ago to explore all the reasons why humanity has been living so far below our potential. And I identified major trends that have basically been raging throughout all of society and all of human history. And it basically comes from a form of psychopathy, collectivism, hierarchy, manipulation of money. There's dark magic involved and all sorts of other stuff. But this is just the latest rendition of a unconscious and conscious battle between the material and spiritual worlds. And I came at it from a very political, financial background. I was in the Marine Corps for 7 years during 9/11. I was a successful millionaire running my family's business. By the time I was 30 years old, I went to Boston College. I was a conservative Republican back in the day. And now I've gone through all the muck and mire of all human history, psychology, all this stuff to predict what is ultimately coming about, which is the death of the dollar and the end of the global generational debt-based fiat Ponzi scheme that has been created off of unlimited amount of debt and death since the foundation of the Federal Reserve in 1913, and obviously going back further than that. But our latest rendition is going to be the death of the dollar. The dark forces want to control us with a mark of the beast, one world currency, and consolidate all of our freedoms under the thumb of a few technocrats that we'll never even know the names of. And I believe that they're going to fail spectacularly, and then there's going to be a great conscious awakening of humanity.
Wow.
That's going to come as a result of this, and there's going to be a renaissance and a rebirth, and we're going to get in tune with each other and realize that we have far more in common with our fellow brothers than anything that these cunning collectivists would do to divide and conquer us. So wherever you want to go from there. And silver's the key to all of this.
Wow,
What an intro,
Yeah.
man. Beautiful.
That was probably the most influential, intro.
It's all downhill from here, guys.
No problem, man. This is going to be great for our viewers. They really need this kind of message because a lot of people, as you mentioned, they're going through like a destructive level of consciousness where people are just taking narratives and they're running with it. So I think this is going to be great. Go ahead, man.
That's what gives me.
Go ahead.
That's what gives me hope is that the younger kids right now don't understand, and I say kids, I'm talking millennials and I mean the rest of the world. It's not just the millennials. Baby boomers are probably more at fault than anything, but they've been fed a systematic way of manipulating human consciousness.
Yes.
They're fed sound bites. They're manipulated by input and output, and what is ultimately going to break through that is the trivium of bringing logic in between the stimulus and the response, because that's where our freedom is. Viktor Frankl, who's a former Holocaust survivor, said in between stimulus and response, that space in between is our freedom. And that's where logic and conscious thinking and saying, hey, why am I being presented with all these ideas? Why is the momentum changing? Why, it's always about the individual realizing that what's going on in the herd is probably not what's best, and that there's cunning collectivists at the top of all social organizations that gain power by telling lies to their followers to sacrifice more and more for them at the top and thinking that they're doing good. And now we're running to the end of it because all the schemes have run into a global generational debt-based fiat Ponzi scheme, and it's all popping. So individuals who recognize that the world is going away, that we're never going back to the way it was, and take positive dramatic actions in their own personal life to walk away from that are going to be the ones that are going to be the foundation of whatever comes next. And you guys get to decide that. I think he who has the silver is going to be able to make the rules.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and it's really hard for, someone in my age group to tell these millennial generations because a lot of them have egos and a perception they need to protect. So the moment you come at them with a new idea, they become defensive because they don't want to crumble their belief system that they've built for 25, 26, 27 years, their whole life. They've constructed this ego and this this wall that they don't really allow new information, and the only information they allow in, like you said, is the media press. And the media press is controlled by an elite that have X amount of agendas, and these agendas need to be met, whether it's through, messages in music, in TV channels, movies, whatever it may be. That
Agreed.
It's hard to get this information across to my audience, let's say.
I think the hardest message to convey is, when you say dark forces, I think people cannot put a face to what that is, because I don't think a lot of people understand what the globalist agenda is and who the globalists are. Because as you mentioned, it was a scheme. Well, most recently, the Federal Reserve, 1913, under President Woodrow Wilson. A lot of people don't really understand the underlying factors behind that. So I think that's the hardest message to convey right now. Because when people think of the enemy, they think of what mainstream media is putting out there. They're telling them Trump. They're telling them all kinds of other things with Epstein.
Hegelian dialectics.
Yeah. So it's. How would you give them a face?
Henry Ford said it best. I think he's the one who said this quote. He said, if people understood
the banking system,
there'd be a revolution tomorrow morning. And that is so true on so many levels.
Agreed.
Well, we're going to get a revolution. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be a consciously awakening one because we're too late in the game. I tried for 10 years to wake people up to this, and they still, ran to every other digital illusion out there.
Of course.
Getting back to starting at the beginning with the millennials, saying their ego defenses. Yeah, it's called an ego defense mechanism where they end up seeking confirmation bias. So once you're indoctrinated into a new line of thinking, your ego starts wrapping itself around it, especially if it's a malignant kind of, ego where you become proud of whatever thought pattern that you have. And I'll give you an example of mine. I was a staunch neoconservative Republican after 9/11. I was in the Marine Corps. I thought that all the Muslim people out there were, our enemies now. How dare they do that to us, until I found out that 9/11 was an inside job manipulated by our government to get us into $6 trillion wars over bullshit intelligence that never happened to secure the world's oil resources, because Saddam Hussein wanted to get off the petrodollar standard and start trading oil for gold and euros. So he had to go, and they needed to concoct that. And when I woke up to that, I said, oh, fuck. I not only my ego was totally involved. I mean, I had bumper stickers on the back of my car saying 9 out of 10 terrorists, vote for, I forget who the Democratic, candidate at the time was.
Me too.
But I was completely indoctrinated into that, and my whole upbringing, being Catholic and going to college and being a billionaire or millionaire at the age of 30 and doing all this other stuff until truth came in. And once you see truth, you'll never fall for their tricks again. There's a lot of subtle tricks that are used against us in our media, our social structures, even these masks that are going on now. These are all tricks to sublimate your freedom and your will to the wills and ninnies of the people that seek to control our consciousness. So the way to break through all these things is to realize that if you're going along with the crowd, you really need to pump the brakes, son. You really do, because that says to me that if you're not thinking, we know the masses of people aren't thinking. They're just incapable of it. They're demoralized, uneducated, struggling to survive, full of toxic thoughts that have been passed down, abuses and all this other stuff. So if you're going along with the masses, chances are that there's a very cunning collectivist that is benefiting off of that, whether it's Democrats, Republicans, CEOs, or your church. Somebody's benefiting off of your weakness, and they want you to maintain a state of fear and weakness so that you end up clamoring for somebody to come save you outside of yourself. So I've always come at this from conscious individual solutions to all these unconscious collectivist problems.
Beautiful.
And anybody who hears that, understands that, conscious individual solution to all these unconscious collectivist problems will be free forever. Because once they start to realize that there's the key, I simply need to start thinking consciously about what's best for me. Why am I being fed this information? Is it necessarily true? Instead of looking for bias confirmation, start looking for the exact opposite and see if that there's any truth inside the inside of a contrary position. Then you can decide. And that's where I came up with this idea: listen to all and follow none. That's your way out.
I like that right there.
That's
Listen
crazy.
to all, follow none. And just backpacking off of what you said, how people are handed down these thoughts, and it's something that I always said. When kids are born, their parents just hand them down a set of beliefs and rules and a system that they never look left or right. And then they hand it down to their kids and so forth. But the moment we start having this conscious awakening that we're spreading this information. The new generation of kids are no longer going to have this belief system. Like, you were born into Catholic religion like I was. I was born into many sets of regime rules and rigid outlooks on life and money as a whole. But the moment I started breaking that down, I broke the chain in my family. And I hope to get this message across to break the chain in many other families. And they pass it down to their kids. So that way, history is rewritten. History could be rewritten every 100 years. So if we're able to start it now and start breaking the chain in many different families and making an impact, ultimately the world will take a better turn from where we're headed now.
And also,
I agree.
Piggybacking off of what you said as well about your Great Awakening, Matt was awoke before me. So when I had my Great Awakening, it was through a video called The 1%, and it was done by Peter Schiff, and he was basically out in Wall Street telling people that they should be riding to the Fed and not at Wall Street. And the rebuttals he was giving people with, real capitalism, not crony capitalism, that started blowing my mind.
Or fascism.
It just, so many circuits went off. I promise you, I didn't know what to think. I didn't know how to think. And I just felt betrayed my whole life, that my thoughts and narratives have been controlled. It's been given to me from someone else. So when I watched that video, it just led to a rabbit hole of a series of videos, which also led to some of your videos as well. Great job, by the way. You do a great job explaining everything about the markets, silver, commodities, banking systems. You're really awesome, and I really appreciate the content that you put out there. And again, it's good to have you here.
Well, thank you. And your story represents and resonates with every other story of somebody waking up, and that's why I know ultimately that we can't lose. You got to think about the billions and trillions of dollars that goes into media manipulation and politics and banking and religions and, trying to keep the people in fear and stuff like that. And all it takes is one person to go, oh, fuck, I don't have to live like this anymore. That there's other people out there, and you start to learn for yourself, you'll never go back. Never. And not only will you never go back, you'll then become better at explaining it to other people. Oh, and I wish we had more time, but I really feel that the dollar collapse is coming, weeks, months, days, if not sooner, to do that. Wow. And that's why I've been encouraging people to say, hey, the world may be screwed up, but my world doesn't have to be, and as bad as I can paint a picture, and trust me, I can paint holy hell picture of 200 million Americans being unemployed by this time next year, very easily. But it also comes back down to if an individual sees that it's coming, is able to withdraw their wealth outside the digital illusion of wealth paradigm that runs the system, gets into real friends, real skills, and real wealth, they'll be immune to this, or at least be so far ahead of the pack that they'll have their head about them when everybody else is losing theirs, and they're going to be available to have a huge amount of opportunities when everybody's panicking and selling at the bottom.
Agreed.
And I think owning physical silver, this is so important. Owning physical silver, and we'll get into all the reasons of why, but owning physical silver is the only way through to the other side. It is the eye of the needle time, because silver has been the most manipulated asset that has given rise to the banking system. When we were talking about Peter Schiff and the Federal Reserve and the rise of the 1%, our current paradigm is run by the debt and death banking system. Now, I properly identified this as the Federal Reserve is a privately owned bank. It's the third rendition of a privately owned bank. Hamilton brought one into our country right after the Revolutionary War and betrayed our founding fathers. But the third, and Andrew Jackson got rid of the second one. But the third one is the most pernicious one. The Federal Reserve is a privately owned bank, folks. It's just like the three of us got together and forced the government into giving us the monopoly of issuing dollars, and we all get the interest and profit and all the, create any amount of money, just the three of us. Except that there's actual trillionaires out there, namely the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, Kuhn, Loeb, Schiff, not Peter Schiff, but other Schiffs, that are old world banking families that have manipulated all of human history, both sides of every war they have profited off of and hid behind the scenes. Yep. And they throw out paradigm puppets like presidents and kings and stuff, but they are the dark power behind it. So the way I look at it is the debt and death paradigm. Debt is the Rothschilds because they were the banking power in Europe. And that's how they rose to their power. But death was the Rockefeller power that they partnered with to create the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is not federal. and it has no reserves. It's an illusion. It's a magical trick, and they have warped the consciousness of humanity simply by that. And now they're eating their own tail. This is like Ouroboros, eating its tail. Eventually, at some point, the lies become so big that it digests the entire healthy host. And the United States is about to, have a seizure, not unlike what we had during World War II and the Great Depression 80 years ago, or 80 years before that with the Civil War, or 80 years before that with the Revolutionary War. We're going to have something else. And it's going to be bad. I'm not saying that. But individuals who recognize that this is coming and transfer their wealth through physical silver into the next paradigm will be able to buy land and assets and technology and labor from people who are absolutely shocked to death that they lost everything. Everything that they believed in will go away because it was all built off of lies that we could get something for nothing and that debt didn't matter.
Yeah, wow.
Wow, I agree.
You basically just summed up from the moment we got off a gold standard to like right now.
Yeah.
Maybe even a little bit before that, because 1913 we had the Federal Reserve come together. That was the third central banking system, and it's still alive. We're going on like 89 years. If you go through history, there's been no currency to ever survive, period. So I don't know where people get the notion that the dollar is going to survive. Like you said, you foresee a collapse, as we do too. But my fear with the collapse is, since we have assets valued in dollars denominated, wouldn't that cause an asset hyperinflation, pulling these assets so astronomically in price away from the people that really need these assets, not the rich, the middle class, the lower end? It's going to pull it so far away from them, and it's going to create the biggest wealth divergence in history if that theory is correct, of course. So,
Well, it's already happening. Just look at Tesla stock today. I mean, it's up 7% after being up even more ridiculous. So what they're doing is that the Federal Reserve, the privately owned bank, they all golf together, they intermarry together, they socialize together, they know that all their fortunes are tied together. So who are they going to take care of? The masses out there who are, barely making it along, that they've been victim of these paradigms, or through a myriad of tricks that they use in accounting and front-running trades and policy and all this other stuff. They're just piling in more money into these 5 stocks that have accounted for $1.6 trillion of new wealth in the last 6 months, while the rest of the Wilshire 5,000 have collapsed. They're all bailing out themselves. So what ends up happening is that further concentration of wealth leads to imbalance. We've already had a massive imbalance of wealth, which is why we still preach, the economics, and why we still think that we still have political choice, and there's dissenting voices on the media. That's why they have a total control. And what ends up happening, folks, just like in Star Wars, the tighter they get their grip, the more star systems slip out of their system. So the same thing happens to us. The longer that they hold their grip, the more individuals are going to wake up and go, I'm out forever. I'm never going to career. I'm never going to bank with you. I'm never going to play along with this game. It's evil. It's immoral. It's unsustainable. It only benefits the most cunning and psychopaths of the world. These billionaires that have a tremendous psychopathy of hoarding so much wealth, when there would be so much easier if they started to build sustainable and conscious communities and give food and energy around to all the people around there, instead of hoarding on so they can go on to their mega yachts, or worse, Elon Musk making rockets to Mars. Like, let's make this planet amazing. Stop giving money to these guys who want to waste it on war and debt and bailing out their buddies and blowing rockets to Mars and, acting like they're the king of the world. No, we are all kings and queens of the world, and we all need to be respected, and we all need to take care of each other. And it starts with conscious kings and individuals waking up and saying, I don't want to play this game anymore. I'm not falling for their digital illusions of wealth. I'm going to make a moral stand to take my wealth out of the system, transfer it through physical silver. And once we get to the other side, when think about the devastation of the real estate market that's going to end up happening. At some point, the jobs won't be there to pay for the mortgages. We're already seeing 27 million people who are going to be, kicked out of their homes because of what has already happened. And as this progresses further, we've been off the cliff since March. Off the cliff. The global economy shut down in March, and we've been living off of just this credit card system where we take out our credit card or federal debt and keep paying But at some point, the bill comes due, boys. And when it does, it's going to be heavy. Nobody's going to be able to pay it because it's going to come in hyperinflation. All this assets that went up in the stock market and floating around in the cyberspace and all this other stuff is going to come down to the real world where people are going to go, whoa, everything that I, bought once before is now costs a lot more. And I'm starting to concern about my real world, not my theoretical digital asset prices. Oh, I'm a digital millionaire. No. Are you a real billionaire? Do you have real tangible wealth outside the system when the banking system goes down?
Wow, that's very true.
I must ask you this, I'm able to distinguish a lot of things that you're saying, and you're really comfortable talking about a lot of topics that I've done research on as well, because I know what you're saying, but you say it so comfortably. What got you to that point where you're able to just speak on these things so comfortably? Like, where was your breakthrough? Because that was so well explained.
I think dispelling all my doubts, really researching and trying to put together, think about it. I started a channel called The Greatest Truth Never Told. I didn't set the bar high enough. Like, that's basically saying greater than the Bible, greater than, all of history, greater than all the leaders. I looked for that. I wanted to find out why humanity constantly finds itself in debt and struggle, and why these cunning actors, continue to take the world stage and cause so much pain and toil through there. And I realized the majority of it was humanity was literally left in the dark, illiterate, starving. The priest class of the Vatican, going back, 2,000 years ago, had this hidden language of Latin, where they, accumulated a ton of power because they said, well, my God says that you need to give us money. Well, that's a very powerful trick that you get to play on a lot of people, and then keep it hidden from them by, hiding it behind the Latin language and this indoctrination of the Catholic Church. That gave rise to that power. And then kings and queens started to realize, well, shit, I can do that same thing too. I'm the king of the land. Now you have to give me your power and, and have the ability of going out there and slashing a few throats if anybody got in the way. The Catholic Church has probably slit as many throats as, any single, government out there, including England, that invaded 9 out of the 10 countries in the world. This is the kind of long conscious humanity that we've been waking up to. And now we're coming to a point in humanity where all the information's right there. We have the internet, folks. We have truth. I was able to put together all these pieces that remained hidden. There's a lot of people who studied finance and were very good at finding finance, but then missed the emotional, psychological, spiritual aspects of this. And I was able to look through all the things and started to realize, it's all similar. Cunning collectivists, psychopaths, take control of large collective groups and steer the unconscious masses to sacrificing more and more and more to the cunning folks at the top. And you can look at the Mayans, any culture, this always happens. So the only solution out, and given that we're at the consequence stage where they cannot bring on any more debt, they cannot pump this illusion up anymore, and they're all bought in on this one world government and this global generational debt-based fiat Ponzi scheme. So when this pops, boys, everything is going to be put on the table. Our governments, our religions, our social structures, our money, our value structures, the assets, what's cool, what's not cool, everything's going to be put up there. And I think the individuals who saw this coming are going to be able to step back and go, this is what's cool now. Silver is cool. Sustainable architecture is cool. Living one in harmony with each other. Do no harm. Do what you promise. Simple rules. We don't need this, large codex of regulations and nanny state bullshit and police state bullshit.
I agree.
Real kings don't need laws, and I think that's where I think something great can come of this. But there's going to be a lot of hardship before that.
Yeah. Wow.
Definitely.
I totally agree. And just jotting back a little bit to what you said, how you have these 5 stocks that are, they almost, let's say they have unlimited funding in a sense, until the dollar collapses. Mm-hmm. But this is something that I've always said. We have individualism for the small people, and then you have socialism for the large behemoth companies, because they're the ones that are going to get bailed out. We're not the little guys, not the people that make up this corporate America. We're going to be left behind. Not even the employees.
It's literally just these shareholders, and the shareholders are the insiders that are, running the game. Yeah. So it's just a big scam, and we're not in it. Wow. So the only way to there was a movie that was probably made before you guys were born called War Games, and it was this AI supercomputer that went through all the possibilities of a global thermonuclear nuclear warfare between Russia and the United States, and ran through all the simulations, and it found out that it said strange game. The only way to win the game is not to play it. That is probably that line. I mean, I was in 4th grade when and I hit that. And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even think that you could not play the game if it wasn't fair. That's what we're in, folks. We're in for a game that's completely unfair, that has warped our reality. And the only way to win it is to stop playing it. Stop careering for them. Stop listening to their media. Stop listening to their lies. Stop buying their assets. Stop looking up to these billionaires like they're somebody to look up to. Those are the most deceivers. Those are the guys that know better and continue to preach the words of separation, scarcity, and sin, while they end up, living high on the hog so they can go fly off to Mars and fulfill their man-child dreams. These are not real men. These are not real men. Real men take care of other people and guard against dark evil like that. These are man-childs, psychopaths, people who have, played along the game, have sold their soul. Somewhere along the line, they've compromised people. And you could just look at this Epstein and Maxwell case. There's tons of other dark people out there who would manipulate humanity. And I'm a firm believer you don't get anywhere near the top without kissing a lot of rings. And those rings are not on the Forbes billionaire list. They're trillionaires that own the central banks of the world. They're the Vatican. They're the Rothschilds. They're the Rockefellers. Those are the real powers behind the scenes. And I hope that humanity wakes up when we face the consequences of all this debt and death that they've been spreading, that we wake up and say, I see you. I see your real power, and I'm not going to play that anymore. Yep. And that's when we can have a new silver conscious age of humanity. And that's what comes next. If we are successful, if we go through this with our hearts and with truth and with light, we'll come through, and there'll be a renaissance on the other end. Because all the darkness, all the evil, all the fear, all the limitations that they put on us in our daily lives, where you can't even go into an ice cream store now without a freaking mask on. Exactly. All those lies will be broken, and we'll be like, this is what freedom feels like. Responsibility. I have to take care of myself. I have to work to find food, to take care of shelter, to take care of other people. And then when you find that we work better together instead of being alone in our rooms on a phone.
Yeah. Wow. When you're speaking, you're sending like 20 circuits at a time off of my brain, and I have like so many things to just keep, feeding your fire. So you're talking about leaving the system, and that's how you win. That's how they lose. And we have this whole, this agenda of Black Lives Matter, defund the police. And I had stated a few weeks ago that if you want to defund the police, defund the root of it, and that's the central banking system. Because defunding the police, that's like just pulling one leaf off of a tree. No, deroot it. Get out of their fiat shit. You need to find an alternative to their currency, because by you using their currency, you're still giving them all the power. By you going into debt, you're giving them strength. They're going to reign longer in power the longer we use the system. And if we could bypass it and just as a community, as a unity, get this message across and teach people how to use other forms of currency, or should I say money, because currency is something that doesn't hold value. Money holds value by definition, And silver is an amazing opportunity, and I know how bullish you are on silver, and I know your views outside of silver in terms of Bitcoin and gold and all the other commodities, but my audience is not aware of your views. So let's talk about what's your opinion on gold, on other precious metals like copper. I'm quite a copper bull, Just a fun fact right off the top of my head, we have 2% of electric cars, and by 2030 we're forecasted to be at 7%. At 5% electrical cars, there's going to be no more copper left on Earth. So to me, I could see a gigantic demand in copper within the next decade. So I do like other precious metals, and I totally agree with all your views on silver. Silver is not only has a lot of utility in industries, it's also a precious metal, and it also has medicinal purposes. It's antibacterial. I have a silver spray when I get sick to help, take care of some of the bacteria if I have a sore throat and whatnot. Silver is used in so many things that I can't even go over. I'm pretty sure you can nail them off the top of your head. But I would love to hear your opinion on other metals and other commodities, such as what I stated.
Yeah, silver is the only asset I'm in. People go, Chris, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Well, I look at the entire global spectrum of assets, and all I see is bubble-to-bubble assets. We've had the real estate market, which has popped since March at all-time highs. The stock markets, the bond markets, the art market, the classic car market, the sneaker market, the Bitcoin market, everything was at all-time highs except for silver, even gold. Gold is right now back at its all-time high, right? And silver's still 65% below its all-time high. True. Silver is worth, in my mind, will be worth more than gold. Gold, there is 6 times more investable gold above ground, roughly 6 billion ounces of gold above ground, than there is silver. Silver has an estimated 1 to 2 billion ounces of investable silver above ground. And I believe even half, if not more than that, is fake because they include these ETFs, which are nothing more than electronic digit receipts of real silver. And that if you look at any of the things like USA Debt Clock, the paper, the amount of paper that they trade on top of physical ounces is always over 100, if not up to 200 claims for 1 ounce of silver. So that means if one actor pulls their silver out, 199 other actors are not going to get their silver. And they think that they're hedging against it. So silver is by far the most manipulated asset. It's actually less silver above ground than there is gold. And it is the second most versatile commodity in the world next to oil. And we just saw the entire oil complex go down. So what's going to be the new technologies are all going to be involved with using electricity, which silver is the most conductive, mirrors, it's the most reflective. It has antimicrobial, antiviral, anti-cancer, literally nothing that it kills viruses, vampires, and banksters. Silver is like the perfect trifecta of everything out there. So I believe that the manipulation that has persisted on silver is going to break, because once their debt-based fiat Ponzi scheme collapses and they can't, put, and this is a fact, and it's a Bloomberg article, and I'd probably have to Google it for you, but they spend $5 trillion a year manipulating an at best $20 billion market cap of physical silver every year. $5 trillion worth of paper trades to control a $20 billion physically annually mined global production of silver. That says to me that they put a lot, and that's every year, folks. So compound all that. Silver is going to go through the roof, because then once you start to realize that these guys, which we almost broke the bank in March, they're going to start looking for anything real. They've already piled into gold, which is why gold's back to the high thing. But as soon as the silver message gets out into the consciousness, and I think this is what's wonderful, all the average guys, we can pile into silver and literally own up the market by central banks, values of silver when they're all into gold. The gold to silver ratio right now is 1 to 100. All right, just basic math. Like, does this make any sense? It's trading for every 1 ounce of gold, you need to have 100 ounces of physical silver. Yep. Okay, that's about the dollar value between the two of them.
I went over this in my last
It only comes out of the ground. It only comes out of the ground at a 1 to 8 ratio. So even if we just got back to, the mining ratio that it comes out of the ground, that means silver's got to go up 10 times relative to whatever gold does. I think gold is so undervalued in this global paradigm of all these debt illusions, all this other stuff. Gold's going to go up, but silver relative to gold is going to eat it all up. Yeah. Anybody who thinks that they're in gold and that they're safe, they're wrong, because silver is going to destroy your purchasing power relative to silver. If you could trade in 1 ounce of gold to get 100 ounces of silver right now, and the gold to silver ratio collapses to a 1 to 10, that means your 100 ounces now buys you 10 ounces of gold. When would you ever think that you could, do a 10 bagger on gold simply by one trade and waiting for the gold to silver ratio to collapse?
Wow.
Yeah. It's funny. I went over that in my last podcast.
In a world where everything else is falling apart.
Yeah.
Think about that. Then think about, the gold and silver price goes up. What is land prices going to do when local governments are desperate and confiscating land? Anybody who even owns their property outright, in a hyperinflation, local governments will keep raising your property taxes as if they need more money to continue their collectivist scheme, taking the wealth from the people who even have land. And then what ends up happening? All these governments end up with all this land impoverishment, nobody investing in anything, and they go, we need investors. Well, what are they going to invest with? I think you're going to get to a point where an ounce of silver is going to buy you an acre of arable land. Wow. And I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility, because if you remember from before, there's only 1 to 2 billion ounces of investable silver above ground, which I believe that's even a wide. I don't even think there's that much out there, but there's 8 billion arable acres of land. There's 8 billion people out there. That means there's less than 1/10 of an ounce to 1/4 an ounce of silver if it was equally divided amongst everybody in the world. That's how rare this is, and we're treating it like it's cheaper than pizza. It makes no sense. So we must have a massive revaluation of silver, and through that massive revaluation of silver, the valuations of everything, the debt and death paradigm will collapse, because it was unsustainable. And I hope that the investors that buy into silver will be the conscious people who said, I saw this coming, I realized the ramifications of this, I invested in this, and I'm not going to be like these cunning guys where at the top who are going to end up, as soon as they made their money, they're going off to Vegas and banging hookers and doing coke and, Lamborghinis and all that other stuff, wasting capital. Yep. We should be the ones that start to reinvest and create conscious, sustainable communities for everybody to live in. And that will be the greatest investment in the happy faces and the full bellies. And I would imagine an unleashment of art and happiness and, working together and all this other stuff can come at the other end of this. But unfortunately, we're going to have to go through some very hard times. And I recommend everybody start to wake up, realize that the world can be screwed up, but your world doesn't have to be. And the sooner that you're able to get your wealth out of the digital illusions of wealth and into real physical things that you can touch, like silver, cold hard cash used to mean coins in your hand. Like, we're so far off. And so anybody who hears my voice will never unhear this, and they'll always be influenced by this, and they'll always now move towards that, because that's the real thing. That's the real truth. And nobody tells that to our kids anymore. And that's where I think that our greatest hope is just individuals hearing my voice and understanding this, taking action and doing whatever they can to live their life better and consciously, and stop enabling the worst in humanity with our votes, our views, our careers, our investments, and start getting real about everything.
Wow. And you know what? You hopping on this podcast is going to go a long way, because I'm starting to get a little bit of traction. I'm starting to get my younger generation, the millennial generation, I'm turning some gears in their head. And once they hear your enthusiastic voice and your passion behind everything you're saying, they're going to see there's deep conviction and there's truth in there. I could hear the truth. Me too. And I could hear the passion and energy in your voice. This message will impact a lot of people, and I can't thank you enough for even sharing some of this with us today and helping it get across.
Well, I thank you guys for doing this. Everybody goes, Chris, you saved me. I have if you really want the deep dive, go to sonsoflibertyacademy.com. It was my free effort. I did a 46-hour long PowerPoint presentation that basically 10 years ago uncovered all this stuff. And I've just been consistently resynthesizing it down to more, intelligible and smaller bites that people can grasp onto. But if people go to sonsoflibertyacademy.com, it's completely free, and it's one of my best works out there. Wow. And the other thing that I highly recommend, if you can't do 46 hours, how about an 8-hour version called Silver Shield on my Greatest Truth Never Told YouTube channel. It's an 8.5 hour. That's probably as tight as I can make this entire paradigm down into a small thing, but 8.5 hours will change your life forever. And anybody who watches that will always, be free. I don't see how you can watch it and go, I'm going to go back and watch Netflix. At that point, I think you become lit with the fire of truth, and that you want to become part of this and spread the word, because once you know that there's life on the other side, all people need is a vision, and we haven't been given a vision. And I think that I lay out a very clear and concise vision about how we got into this mess, how bad it's going to get, and how individuals can step back from it and say, hey, I don't have to be a victim of this. I don't want to live in major metropolitan areas. I don't want to live an unsustainable lifestyle. I don't want to give my consciousness over to the, talking points of, the Hegelian dialectics on mass media. I'm not going to vote for any of these puppets and paradigm. I'm not waiting for somebody to come to save me. I recognize that I have everything I need inside of me to walk away from the system and do the best that I can, and then start to resonate with people who also share that same energy. By waking up, you also get rid of toxic people in your life, because you start to realize, the psychopaths at the top that I can clearly see who are wasting, billions of dollars on war and debt, those are also the babies, are also the bad girlfriends and the abusive fathers and the, shitty bosses and the, all these other people. you start walking away from them, folks, your life becomes free. You're like, oh, God, this is what it feels like not to be poisoned by these people's shadows anymore. And then guess what? You start attracting better people into your life, like the two of you guys now. You'll probably be buddies forever because you've gone through this. Yeah. And then everybody that you reach in your audience is going to go, wow, I can do this too. But the key is, it's not me, it's not you, it's the individual going, is there something else out there? Questioning the input and output. Those people are responsible for their own conscious awakening. They didn't have to listen to this podcast. They could have been on TikTok and, feeding into the Chinese, propaganda war machine in there. Yep. But it was the individuals that woke up. And that's why I say, listen to all and follow none. There's no guru out there that knows exactly what you're going to need, because you're going to end up searching for all the things that you need to figure out. But once you realize that there's a way out and that you can find it, you'll never be enslaved again.
Yeah. Wow. That was. Every time you speak, I'm just kind of speechless. Bro. You sum everything I need to say. But in such a sophisticated, aggressive delivery that it's just like I couldn't say it any better.
Yeah, and you're comfortable speaking on it.
I've been at this a long time, guys. Yeah. I've been at this a long time. I take this very seriously. This is the other thing I try to tell people. I don't need to be doing this. I'm a very wealthy man. I've paid a huge personal cost to this. I mean, I walked away from my family's business. I've been divorced. I've been unemployed. I've gone through some dark holes. And I'm finally in a good place in my life where I don't need to do this, but I do it because I know that this is the right thing to do. And that's why we're here on earth. We're not here to, keep our treasures to ourselves, keep all these secrets of power to ourselves. We're here to help our brothers and sisters who are blind, who are innocent child. I don't care, the most arrogant, cunning man out there who thinks that they're, master of the universe and all that other stuff. They're ignorant childs. They don't understand what they're doing. Real adults don't act this way. And we've got man-childs in charge of this system and very cunning dark men that run the system behind it. So I call out their magic, and once you call out their magic, nobody gets tricked by it. You ever seen those videos where the magician shows exactly how they make the plane disappear? Yeah. It's the same thing with our money. It's the same thing with our banking system. It's the same thing with World Trade Center 7, and it's going to be the same with this COVID thing. Once people realize this is how they gain power, and the only way to do it is to find truth and walk away from them, you're free forever. You'll never be under their spell. So I think I'm the breaker of spells. I'm the breaker of lies. And I hope that once people start getting this, everybody does that. Because it's not just me. It's all of us. We are all part of this. We have all created this. We were the ones that built up these psychopaths. We were the ones that voted for them. We were the ones that gave up our values. We were the ones that broke up our family, our family structure. We were the ones that allowed this to possess. And guess what, folks? When we wake up to realize that we were the source of power and that they are literally nothing without us, they cannot cause wars, they cannot manipulate politicians if we don't pay attention to them and walk away from them. And I think silver is going to be the key asset to get through the other side. Eye of the needle time, folks. Get your wealth through the other side, and then we can go create whatever individuals think is the best thing for the brothers and sisters out there.
I agree with that. And to the phrase you keep saying, man-child, there's a full-blown philosophy breakdown on that. I'm just saying that for the people that don't know that term, because I did a little bit of research on that, a few months back, and that's an actual thing from the Stoics. I don't know if you're into philosophy, but that's one of my other passions.
Yes.
Yeah, so one of the Stoics, I forgot who it was, came up with that term, man-child, and that's what we have nowadays, It's the best term you could use for what we have as men nowadays.
And it's a result. I feel like I'm the last generation of men that were raised by men. It's a result of the dark feminine. The dark feminine is the nanny state, is the mother telling you to be fearful, constantly in fear. In fact, the African Americans, when they were enslaved, their women would tell their men to shut up and be quiet because as a defense mechanism. Wow. Because if their men spoke up, they would get killed, beaten and bruised. So they've been subconsciously, and the white slavers knew this. They knew how to manipulate the consciousness of it, and they emasculated the black man. And then once they got, free, then we had this fake war on terror for 50 years. We built up these industrial cities where all the black people from the South went up to the northern industrial things, and then these cunning guys deindustrialized those major metropolitan areas and took away all those good-paying jobs that gave them a chance to have a shot at the middle class and exported them all overseas. And then once they take their jobs away, then they have this fake war on terror where, if a guy's suffering from unemployment, not understanding why their system is broken. And then he's caught with a joint, throw him in jail. Take those father figures out of the system.
Wow.
Cause all this trauma, steal their wealth, the asset thing. And they had this fake war on terror. No wonder that we're suffering from this. And that's just one race inside the freest country in the world. Think about all the other people who are still living under dictatorial states like in Saudi Arabia, or, still bow to the Queen of England. Like, what kind of mentality is this? If freedom doesn't arise in the United States from conscious individuals, nowhere else on earth. And I think that we are the ones that are going to end up shaping. And I think silver is an absolute vital thing that we're going to need, because it's not just high thinking and high morals, and we can kind of have these good feeling communities. You need to have the real capital, and silver is the most undervalued asset. And I think through this breaking of all these lies and illusions and digital illusions of wealth and all these collectivism, silver is going to become tremendously valued. And I think the men holding that are going to be able to ones to say, hey, I've envisioned this, I saw this, and here's what I think I would like to live. For me personally, I want to live in sacred, sustainable, conscious communities where we live, eat, and work all within walking distance of each other. We all have the same value structure. We all have the idea that, do what you promise and do no harm. I don't think there needs to be any other rules between men and, kings and queens out there. We grow our own food. We have our own solar power, and we end up creating art and whatever time and talent flourishes from that, from these happy people who are now no longer struggling day to day just to meet their taxes and their food bills and all this other stuff. What can't we build? We need to break free, but we need a massive revaluation of silver. And I'm calling upon everybody to wake up and realize that every other asset you buy, even gold, you're enabling the worst in humanity. Because think about it, who owns all the gold? The banksters, the Vatican, the very wealthy that have measured their treasures in gold. Yep. They are the ones that control gold. So I think silver is the only way out. The only way out.
And I love that argument right there. I love that because it's so true. And if you look at what's been going on between Russia central bank, we have Japan central bank buying unprecedented amounts of gold.
Yeah, China
too. China, I was just gonna say.
If we know that the dollar's going to collapse, the Chinese knew that this was coming. They're this rising power. These Chinese guys who have killed, 50 million people under Mao, one-child policy. This is a brutal gang. It's not the Chinese. It's the Chinese Communist Party. There's only 800 million, but out of a population of 1.3 billion. Only 800 million of them are these communist thugs. And we've enabled them. It was the banking system that allowed, and the corporations and the CEOs that shipped all of our jobs from the inner cities, that impoverished the average American, to give rise to the worst regime in the world. Not Saudi Arabia, which we were behind to, but the Chinese government. And what do they want? Wow. They're stacking all the gold. They're running all the Bitcoin. And they know that the dollar's going to collapse. So they're going to come back onto the scene and go, ha-ha. We saw this coming, and now you guys are going to have to work for our gold. Fuck that. I think Americans should say, we are not going to play along this game. We see this coming too, and we're stacking our silver, and we're going to create conscious, sustainable communities that are going to be withheld anything that the Chinese can bring.
That is arguably the strongest point in silver that I have ever exposed my mind to. I never even looked at it in that sense.
Me either.
But Jesus, now I'm 10 times more bullish than I was before. In fact, I'm probably going to buy some after this. And I love your message.
Buy physical.
Yes,
listen,
I do.
You guys are trading a lot of digital illusions of wealth. You're a part of this. You're in this casino mentality, but I'm telling you need the physical silver in your possession. Yeah, not vaulted, not to ETFs, not silver mining stocks, no derivative of it, physical ounces.
Yeah, we do. And I preach that to my younger generation.
And the best brand.
Yep.
The only brand.
Silver Shield.
Silver Shield.
Yep. That's exactly.
This is the brand I've done for 10 years. I got 750 designs. In fact, people should go to silvershieldguide.com to get the collector's guide on it. Think about this. I've been casting silver spells of truth in these coins that will never go away. Yeah. My YouTube channel can be taken down. This interview could be silenced. Any books can be burned. But these coins, with the truth and message of the debt and death paradigm and all the exposure of the World Trade Center and all the false flags and the Hegelian dialectics and all this other stuff, has been cast into these silver spells. And anybody even holding my coin it's a powerful amulet of truth where it doesn't exist anywhere else. So I think that the collectible value of these Silver Shield coins are going to even do far better than anybody who buys any physical silver, because most of the physical silver out there is created by who? The same governments that are causing all this problem. Why would you go buy the United States Silver Eagle, this boring bullion coin that's been around for 45 years with no change in thing, that's run by Goldman Sachs, and a government that's spending, I don't know, $5 trillion of our money that we don't have to destroy the currency. Wow. Why would you go back and invest in them? Or how about the Queen of England with the Royal Canadian Mint and the Perth Mint and all this stuff? Why would you want that sick bitch on the back of your coin when her family is involved with invading 9 out of the 10 countries in the world, and the ones that they couldn't invade were landlocked, like Mongolia. Nothing would have stopped them. Yeah. Why would you enable them? Silver Shield stands in stark contrast to them, and I think that I offer a better value proposition than any other brand out there.
Yes, I totally agree. You took it, you beat me to it, but that's what I was going to tell my audience. In your videos, you clearly executed that point you just made very well. Why would we buy from this cartel? Let's call them a cartel, because that's what they are. They're a group of thugs. They're a cartel. Yep. And why are we funding them? Sure, it's silver, but we're buying it from the drug dealer, the worst one on the block, and bypassing it. And I was gonna,
That's a good point. The Queen of England is probably one of the largest drug dealers that ever made. Look up the history of the Opium Wars.
Yes.
Britain had a huge trade deficit with China. China was dynastic China. I think it had 2,000 to 6,000 years of dynastic China, peaceful, industrious people that spread throughout the world. And China ended up accumulating 25% of the world's silver, because that was the money back then, and accumulated 25% of the world's silver. And the British, which was the largest empire at the time, had this massive trade deficit with these Chinese, and they wanted to settle the trade balance with the Chinese buying British manufactured goods. But the Chinese were living in harmony with nature, and selling their silk and tea and all this other stuff, and they kept accumulating all this wealth. So when the British emissary went to go meet the emperor in the Forbidden City, the emperor refused to see the British emissary. So the British were like, well, what are we going to do? I'll tell you what they did. They took their colony where they raped India, and go look this up, boys. $45 trillion. Just Google British Empire steals $45 trillion from India. $45 trillion. Wow. That's what impoverished the second largest population, was their mercantilism out there. But they ended up using, remember the Thuggee from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom?
Yeah.
All right, the Thuggee actually were the opium producers in India that the British East India Trade Company then imported all the opium into China's ports, and literally became drug dealers to help settle the trade deficit and get back the silver through opium trade. They had 2 opium wars in which all the Western empires basically ravaged on China over 2 wars that took 10 years apiece, overthrew dynastic China, and that gives rise to Mao. Mao ends up killing 50 million Chinese in this thuggish Communist Party, and then our same banksters that were the drug runners that did this, now they industrialize those same banksters, and they're behind the scenes again. This is also another article you can look up.
This is a
The Vatican is taking $3 billion from the Chinese and allowing them to rewrite the fucking Bible. This is dark power that's behind the scenes, folks, and nobody else puts all these pieces together like I do. And I keep coming back to, regardless of how deep you want to go into this hole, it all comes back to silver, because all these battles are just in our heads. We are only victim to that which we concede. And if you don't concede to their lies, and you don't concede to their monetary system, and you don't concede to their careers and all these value structures, you are free.
Wow.
I have no words, man.
Yeah.
But, that was awesome. You opened my mind up today in this podcast, which I'm pretty sure you're going to open up a lot of minds for our viewers who are going to watch as well. Man, you're just really passionate about what you do, and it's awesome to see that energy, because now I'm even more motivated than I was before to do a lot more research. Man, that was great. If Matt has anything to say...
You. And that's why I think you guys are more brave than Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan recently signed a $100 million deal to Spotify, saying he's striking out against the technological censorship.
I saw
Boy
that.
Got paid off, and he's not going to. You're never going to hear me on the Joe Rogan podcast. They would never allow. Can you imagine if I got in front of 1 million people like Joe Rogan?
You'd start a revolution.
No-name MMA guys on. He gets 2.3 million views on his podcast and stuff like that. Can you imagine if these words came through on Joe Rogan's podcast and 1 million men go, oh, fuck, I got to go buy some silver right now? The manipulation in silver would be over forever.
You would start a revolution.
Be rushing, and it would go up so fast, it would make Bitcoin's rise look ridiculous. It would make Tesla's rise look ridiculous because all the other markets would fall, and silver would just keep rising and rising. A permanent revaluation of silver is a permanent revaluation of our value structure in our world, and that's what we're going to need. Eye of the needle time.
Yeah, you would literally start a revolution if you got on a stage like that. But we're going to press this, and we're going to get this content out very hard. We're going to promote this a lot. And
isn't it a better story for the millennials? Like, what is BLM and all these Antifa guys offering? They're ripping down statues. Who's building up what? Who's telling truth? Who's actually causing people to think for themselves instead of regurgitating, planned out talking points by these, cunning psychological operations guys that have already overthrown other countries. These are the same talking points that they used in the Bolshevik Revolution and Nazi Germany. The banksters were behind them too. Every enemy that we've had, we've given rise to, and China is the next one. And I think that we can break this spell by cutting these banksters off and taking our money outside the system and getting physical silver so we catch them flat-footed so they can't implement their Agenda 2020 and enabling Bill Gates to tag and track and vaccinate and all this other crazy-ass stuff that they have. All this other stuff. We can decide that we don't want to play their game anymore. We walk away.
I agree.
Who doesn't want to do that? What millennial doesn't want to have a life where they can live in harmony with people and have a better way of life instead of tearing things down and enabling another cunning psychopath that they're going to end up voting out 4 years later?
I agree. And I've been scrutinized for speaking on the Black Lives Matter situation.
And just for the people listening, Dejan is a black male. So this is I don't want to hear
I've been called coon. I've been called every name in the book, but if you see the trend, Black Lives Matter,
that's psychological warfare.
It is.
I think even rappers using nigger inside rap things. That's psychological warfare. That's keep enabling, putting down the black man. That's what the slave masters, told them. Why is it acceptable for Dave Chappelle to constantly say nigger when he's another guy that just signed a $60 million deal, and the first Netflix thing he did, it wasn't funny, folks. All he was doing was talking about more violence and more divisiveness. He's another sellout of this thing. Joe Rogan and Dave Chappelle, and in his thing he says, it's because you trust me. I don't trust Chappelle. I don't trust Rogan anymore because they don't speak the truth.
Me either. And anybody who's pushing that agenda is honestly communist in my eyes, because the only thing they've been doing is destroying the country. Like, they took down Abraham Lincoln. Wasn't Abraham Lincoln the one who freed the slaves?
Yep.
Like, people don't think, and they don't even know their history. So when Trump says know your history or else you're going to end up reliving it, he means that, and people take that into like different context.
Well, I have a worse quote. Those that know their history are doomed to watch it repeat. And that's what I've been afraid of this whole time. I know my history. I know where this goes. I know how this ends. But one thing I do know is that behind every one of these, Hollywood dystopian visions of the future, have you noticed that every Hollywood dystopian, this is another psychological warfare that they did, every vision of the future has always been this robotic, dystopian, impoverished, elite at the top, RoboCop, Terminator, and you name it. There's always some power at the top. I like the idea of that it's not equally bad everywhere all at once. Yes, New York City might become literally Snake Plissken, Escape from New York, and that these $54 million apartments on Billionaires Row in Manhattan end up becoming abandoned and worth nothing. But there's going to be other parts of the country where individuals who are going to walk away from all these cities. If you live in any major metropolitan area, leave this summer right now. Leave this summer, leave whatever you have behind, get out, because it's going to be a completely failed operating system. Think about it. Every single system is a failed operating system. It's worse than the Mac 1. You can't even get on the internet with it because nobody needs to live in Manhattan anymore. Nobody needs to pay the taxes, the regulations, be exposed to millions of people jammed into now COVID-infected areas. You can't go to restaurants, you can't go to plays, you can't go to sports anymore, and then you're just going to have further and then oh God, what if we have a dollar collapse and food
true.
and fuel and electricity stop coming into those things? Now they're humanitarian things. They're a failed operating system, every single city. So I implore every individual to walk away, get back to the boring parts of the country, probably back where your family lived, 2 or 3 generations before corporations started taking the best and brightest out of our local small towns and enticing them with these fake illusions of wealth, of pensions and careers and cars and materialism and all that other stuff. It's time to get back to basics, folks, and silver is the easiest way out.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's stripping them of their power because we're not participating on their Ponzi scheme, like you said.
And you empower yourself. You become your own power.
Yeah.
Man is free the moment that he wishes to be. It's more difficult than that. There's nothing to rage against. There's no statue to pull down. Just if you got a statue in your mind, pull it down and you're free.
Yeah, literally.
If you worship the government, pull it down. Start believing in yourself. Yeah. I've done coins on my in my Silver Shield series called Be Your King, Be Your Queen. Realize that you are the source of power. They need you. They need your votes. They need your careers. They need your attention. They need you to pay your taxes. They need you to do all these things. And without that, their system doesn't work.
Yeah.
Have you ever met some of these very wealthy people? They don't even know how to answer their emails. Like they don't know how to do anything physical. Like they didn't have their supports and networks and all these people that they pay off. But as soon as the means of the dollar not being able to buy off the loyalty and the souls of all the people around them, nobody shows up to work.
Yeah.
And guess what? There's no war, there's no police, there's no nothing. And that's when everybody's going to collapse. Hopefully it doesn't have to be as bad as it is, because hopefully the internet will start speaking more truth and more people will step up in their own personal lives and have real conscious solutions to all these collectivist problems.
And to what you said, stop looking up to the government. But the moment you do that, people love the word.
And stop fearing them.
Yeah.
Stop fearing them.
Yeah. The moment you do that, though, or speak out against them, everyone's going to call you conspiracy theorist. Little do they know, the word conspiracy theorist came from the CIA, a federal government-backed agency after the death of the president. So the assassination, should I say, of Kennedy.
JFK,
Yeah, should I say.
That was
which is a psychological operation. Here's another quote from, I think, William Casey, who is the director of the CIA. We will know when our operations are complete when everything that the average American believes in is false. They purposely have created. Yes, go look it up. William Casey, director of the CIA, said we will know we are completed our operations when everything the American people believe in is false. That's how powerful their magic
that is deep.
And the amazing thing is they've spent research and billions and all this other stuff, and it all collapses as soon as one individual goes, oh my God, I didn't even know that was possible. You see through their tricks. That's why my channel has been so suppressed. I can't believe it's still up. Only because I've only spoke the truth. I've never talked about any violent revolution, never, taking out any particular person, because they're not the problem. We are. And it's so long as we think like them, we're enabling them. As soon as we think for ourselves and start bringing logic and truth into our situation, we're free forever. It's as simple as that. But you need to first get your mind out of this and then take action. It's one thing to think libertarian thoughts or thoughts of freedom, but if you don't have the means of doing it, and I think silver is going to be the largest transfer of wealth, where the average person, I try to get people to stack at least 1,000 physical ounces of silver.
Nice.
Because if you look back through the Bible, 1/10 of an ounce of silver, a denarius, a brother, can you spare a dime, represented a day's worth of hard human labor. Not like working in an air-conditioned Burger King flipping burgers hard day, like working out in the fields hard day, for 12 hours a day under the sun for 1/10 of an ounce of silver. That's less than $2 of silver. Why would you buy an historically, outside the past 100 years, that's what the measurement of your thing. So if you had 1,000 ounces of silver, which costs, I don't know, $18,000, $20,000, whatever it costs, less than an average car, less than a college education, less than a house, that 10,000 or 1,000 ounces of silver represents 10,000 days or 30 years of what 99.999% of humanity had to struggle for just to make ends meet. And to accumulate that wealth, that's even more amazing, because you have to think about the people that worked for a silver dime a day to meet their food and shelter and raising their children and all that other stuff. They were probably living hand to mouth, meaning that those dimes were never really accumulated. So for an average American who could do whatever, get 1,000 ounces of silver, that represents an historically significant amount of physical silver. Did you know that the King of England for 800 years didn't have enough silver to run their economy, so they used tally sticks? So an average silver stacker could get more than what the King of England had in circulation because they were using tally sticks for 800 years in England.
Oh my God.
How about this one? Rome was going to be sacked by barbarians, and the barbarians demanded a ton of gold and a ton of silver. Rome couldn't come up with a ton of silver. That's like $500,000 right now. Why wouldn't you buy Rome ransom for $500,000?
That your analogy is
I'll
crazy.
give you another one. You remember The Last Emperor of China? You probably remember the movie. There was I forget the kid's name, but he was like a 3-year-old last emperor of China. They found out, and you guys can go look this up. I'm full of this stuff because I've been researching this forever. They found out that the royal consort, and I guess it was sort of like the mother figure of this young emperor, ended up selling the throne for silver, the equivalent of only $54 million in modern day times. I forget what the amount of ounces were, but $54 million. Can you imagine selling the dynastic China throne for $54 million? How about Jesus? Jesus was sacrificed for 15 ounces of silver. Would you sacrifice anybody?
No.
I wouldn't even sacrifice a Pikachu for 15 ounces of silver. That shows you how undervalued physical silver is. And when it blows up, folks, it's going to be unprecedented, because not only is it going to rise in nominal terms relative to gold and silver, in dollar terms, but every other asset class is going to fall down, and everybody's going to lose their mind. And anybody who's got physical silver is going to be like, "Oh, thank God I did that."
Yep, I agree. I
Wow,
totally agree.
that means I'm gonna be a wealthy person then, man. I have a couple pounds.
But what are you going to do with it? That's the key. It's one thing to have that. This is a battle of consciousness, and don't think that just because you win one material battle that there isn't a spiritual battle that's going on the whole time. Our whole lives here are not meant to accumulate and take, because we can't take it with us. But I tell you what, the love that we leave, the energy that we entrust in this, and working harmoniously with the people and the earth around us, that's what's going to matter. That's the real riches, and that's something you cannot take. So this is a spiritual war, a material war, a psychological war, an emotional war, a historical war. It's all happening inside your head. And if you're either on the dark side or the light side, and the light side moves towards truth, and the dark side leads towards lies. The light side leads towards individualism. The dark side leads to collectivism. It's as simple as that. And you're the one that sways which way it goes and how powerful each one of those are in your life. I have a coin on my on the goldenstatemint.com, which is where I sell exclusively Silver Shield products. And we have a new coin up there called Two Wolves. And Two Wolves talks about an ancient Native American tale talking about how inside of each of us is two wolves. One that grows off of fear, one that grows off of love, one that grows out of abundance, one that grows out of greed. And the young son goes to the chief, well, which one wins? And the chief goes, well, the one you feed. So who are we feeding? Are we feeding the worst in humanity, or are we feeding ourselves?
That
was great.
Yeah.
Wow. But I mean, obviously, it's holding silver is more than just gaining wealth off of it. It's a means to protect myself and also spread the message to others.
I think I blew all your minds.
You did. Yeah, you did.
And see, the crazy thing is, I could do this for hours, but I tend to. People start muddling over. I mean, honestly, you end up re-listening to each one of these little rants, and there's so much stuff where you can it's a diving place. Let's go look at the foundation of the Federal Reserve, World Trade Center 7, Wuhan, Obama, Fauci, COVID scandals, all these other stuff out there. And then you start to realize, wow, this is a really dark game that we're playing, and I clearly don't have enough power to fight against them. But I can, at some point, say, I'm not playing these games anymore, and I don't want to invest in their system anymore. I don't want a career for them. I don't want to do any harm to anybody. I want to work sustainably. And I want to get my wealth outside the system for when it collapses, so that I can go create opportunities and solutions on the other side. And I think physical silver, and particularly Silver Shield, is going to lead the way to a new silver age of humanity, of consciousness, and hopefully an American renaissance where we can show the world once again that we can build shining cities on the hill and create solutions for the rest of the world to emulate like we once did. This is a blessed land. Freedom cannot come from anywhere else in the world other than the United States. It has to come from here, because all the best and brightest, the bravest that left tyranny all over the world came here. And we got hijacked. Yeah, we got kicked down. Yeah, we got sucker punched. But guess what, folks? All we have to do is get off of our knees, stand up, and look at ourselves in the eye and say, I can do this.
Yeah. Question: do you know QAnon? Do you know of that movement?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's another psyop.
Really?
Really? Talk
Absolutely.
to me. Talk to
Whoa.
me, man. Talk to me. What's
That's
up?
big.
There's nothing to talk about. It's a psyop. They've been talking about this forever. Trump's got 4 months left. What swamp has he drained? All I see is that he brought in a Rothschild agent, Wilbur Ross. Here's another thing you can go look up. LA Times, Wilbur Ross, Donald Trump, Rothschild. Use those keywords. Donald Trump, who loses money in casinos? Donald Trump. Who got bailed out 3 times? Donald Trump. Who bailed him out the last time? The Rothschilds. The same Rothschilds that own the Federal Reserve and all the central banks in the world sent in Wilbur Ross, who is known as the king of bankruptcy, into Donald Trump, bailed him out. And in this LA Times article, they asked, why would you bail out Donald Trump? And Wilbur Ross, working for the Rothschilds directly, said that the Trump name is very much an asset. And guess what? Now he's in office. Now, guess who's the Commerce Secretary? The same guy, Wilbur Ross. So we have a direct Rothschild agent who bailed out Trump, who's been behind the scenes of all these financial things, all this spending, all this bailouts and all this stuff. Who's it enriching, really? The Federal Reserve, the banksters, all these same guys there. How many Goldman Sachs did Trump bring on board? 7 Goldman Sachs guys came onto his most wealthy, House panel there. And I tell you what, if Hillary was in, it would be the same guys. So they just keep changing the puppets. So don't think that Trump or anybody else is going to fix the system. The system has to collapse. Individuals need to walk away, and they're going to be the ones that are going to be the local decentralized power that's going to help rise out of this.
I will say,
and at the very least, prevent yourself from all the drama that's coming. When the old saying is, when a bear attacks the camp, you don't have to outrun the bear. You just have to outrun everybody else.
Wow.
Well, silver allows you to do that. When everybody else is losing their jobs and their pensions and their house and worried about food, you will have physical silver that you can go either barter directly with or go sell at these astronomical high prices, like in Venezuela. When Venezuela went through their hyperinflation, an ounce of silver in bolivars back in I think 2010, not too long ago, was 40 bolivars for 1 ounce of silver. Do you know what it is today?
What's it?
3.4 million bolivars for an ounce of silver.
Wow.
So listen, and this is very important, because when we get into this hyperbolic stage with silver, when silver goes through 21, 26, and 50, those are the next 3 important things. Once it gets above there, it's going to go hyperbolic. Anybody who sells silver at $100 is going to kick their ass, because the next thing it goes is to 1,000, and then 10,000, then 100,000, then 1,000,000, and who knows where it stops. Because it's not that the value of silver is going down, it's the devaluation of the currency, and there's no bottom to it, because there's very limited amount of silver and unlimited amount of dollars out there. So don't get into this silver trade thinking that you're going to go in and out. This is where you take your chips literally off the table. Don't confuse gambling and luck with investment and wisdom, and that's what silver does.
Wow, thank you for that. I've seen a bunch of your exit strategies. You've made YouTube videos on them. I tons of value and content. I strongly advise everybody listening to go check out your page. If you want to go ahead and recite where all my followers can find you, order silver direct through you, bypass the cartel, bypass all the bullshit, and go straight to where it matters. If you want to go ahead.
Probably the most important one is the goldenstatemint.com. Just to let you guys know, and your audience know, in March 20th, I put in a huge order, more than $100,000 of silver on that day, because I knew that that's when the system broke. And there was a huge surge of sales volume. And all the mints in the world shut down except for the Golden State Mint and Silver Shield. We were the only ones that saw this coming and maintained a plentiful resource of all the silver and stuff out there to continue to sell when everybody else needed silver. Nobody could get silver from anywhere else, not APMEX, not any of these other dealer sites out there, because the United States Mint, run by the Army, and Goldman Sachs decided to shut down because of COVID. The Royal Canadian Mint decided to shut down, get this, selling gold and silver so that they can create face masks. So I took an ad out on Instagram. I said, leave it to the slave queen of England to shut down her Royal Canadian Mint to make more masks for her slaves and not give gold and silver out when there's a large financial crisis going on. Leave it to the United States Army and Goldman Sachs to shut down the West Point Mint where they produce all this gold and silver. I said, but thank God that there was one Marine, his Silver Shield, and the Golden State Mint that stayed open during the whole time. We were the only brand that has grown during this entire silver bear market. We were the ones that are in position. We put out 750 different designs out there, and we were the only, and we're continuing to grow through this. So you can find all my products exclusively over at goldenstatemint.com. Even if you don't buy Silver Shield products, I want you to support that mint because they're best in the business that I can deal with. People who are still learning, if you want a deep depth, go to sonsoflibertyacademy.com. It's a free 46-hour, 1,776 PowerPoint presentation that will change your life. It's worth more than any college degree that you could possibly get for free. I mean, I don't know where you even get that offer. People who want a more passive version, go to the Sons of Liberty or The Greatest Truth Never Told on YouTube. You can look up the main video up there. It's called Silver Shield. That's the name of the movie. It's an 8.5-hour movie. And that's my most concise version of just how big this problem is, how it's going to end, and what we can do through getting through the other side. I have an Instagram page, which I really put a lot of effort in, and I'm not getting any traction because of whatever's going on there. But that's also The Greatest Truth Never Told.
And I can help you with that content.
And I think that's it.
Wow. Okay, well, we really appreciate you hopping on and, enlightening our audience and taking the time out of your day to provide probably the most valuable information I've heard all 2020, to be honest with you.
Wow.
Or for the last couple of years.
Yeah, the way you orchestrated, the way you executed, the passion and energy behind your words and the delivery, there's little to none. I don't know anybody that could deliver that kind of content in such short notice. I literally messaged you and he said, yeah, let's do it. Why not? And just delivered as if you studied for your whole life.
Your whole life.
But
you set a whole new bar. You set a whole new bar.
Yeah. I've been waiting for this, and I knew all the energy that I needed to bring to this. Because if I didn't step up in a particular way, people wouldn't have the confidence of stepping forward. I did all the hard research. Trust me, I've gone through all the nicks and crannies. I've dispelled all the other magic tricks out there. I know all their psychological operations. I know all the dirty war stuff. I think I know everything I need to know to realize that all of our power resides inside of us, and we're the only ones that enable this stuff. So I hope that my message at least gets people to think and stop accepting the social media manipulation, the hopium, which like QAnon or Ron Paul or Alex Jones or somebody's going to come save us. And you don't have to worry, folks. You don't have to do anything different. Just stay focused on QAnon. What a clever psyop that was. Wow. It totally took people off the mark, thinking that somebody's going to come save them from themselves, and nobody's coming to save you from yourself.
Wow.
Jeez, man. You know what? Honestly, I came in here not knowing that I was going to have my beliefs shattered,
mine
which
too.
You just did.
You just shattered mine as well. Like, now I have to go back and
now I have to do my own.
Back to the drawing board.
Yep.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, if you find something that you believed in and even purported, like, I mean, for all this time, I was like, show me something better than silver. I have no problem. I'll throw silver away if I think that there's something better. But it's such a focal point on so many different levels. I haven't been able to move off of that. But if you come across something that shatters your thing, don't take it as this, my ego, I have to defend it. No, just go, maybe this is the new truth, and this is now part of me now.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. That I have a whole new outlook now, because I'm open-minded. I'm not closed off to new ideas and new beliefs and new views on life. Period. So I'm always willing.
And that's why you've been successful this far. Yeah, you've been very successful inside this paradigm because you've been able to follow trends and see where things are going and think things out. This is the biggest trend. This is the biggest transference of wealth, and this is the biggest time for anybody. And it's the easiest trade. I mean, can you imagine, like, if I finished all these things talking about it and then said, well, you have to get into options trading and somehow trade, leverage this and do that, you get eaten up. It's the simplest thing. The simplest thing is to buy physical silver, something your grandparents would go, oh, that's a smart idea to have some real money outside the system. Something that if you went through any other time in history that would mark a day's worth of hard human labor and 1/10 of an ounce of silver, and you traveled through time with 100 ounces of silver, you'd be a king in any other nation, anywhere else throughout any other period of time, simply because you have this silver bar. But in this paradigm, people would think Yeezy sneakers are worth more than silver. Pizza's worth more than silver. Like, we're so far upside down. And that's where I think the greatest transference of wealth everybody starts clamoring for things that are real and sustainable, and silver is going to be the focal point of this thing, and it's going to be amazing.
Wow, that was phenomenal. You know, we're wrapping it up now. We're going on an hour and 20 minutes, and we could go on for another 4 because your energy is through the roof with this kind of content.
Yeah, I know.
This
You're
I
amazing.
do this all day long, but
Yeah.
we're probably better off ending it now because I'll end up just kind of repeating a lot of the same things different ways. But
And a lot of the people don't have the attention span nowadays. You know, like you said, they'll just hop over to TikTok or Instagram and lose complete, you know, attention.
And again, that's part of the psychological operation to keep
Like
us
Jada and Will Smith.
like little rhesus monkeys. You know, that's how they best manipulate us. So that's why it's important. If you do have a hard time, and if you're listening this far in the interview, but if you do have a hard time, focus, meditate. I do a lot of meditation.
Yes,
and that's how you start taking control of your mind.
Very important. I do yoga, and I do practice a lot of mindfulness activities, and I do as well. And I suggest everybody, but you know, nobody's going to probably do it. But if they do, their life will change.
But the few that do, they'll be eternally grateful, and we're all part of the solution for a lot of other people, and that's what gives me hope.
I agree.
Yep, absolutely. Now...